Who is Putin really, and how can you talk to him, and who can do it? Why is France exploding with protests and some not-so-healthy trends? What is exploding meanwhile in occupied Crimea? And what is Belarusian dictator Lukashenko up to? We'll talk about that and more just now. We have Monday, the 1st of July, the first day of the new month of summer, which I'm sure brings us even closer to victory. Our traditional Today program is on the air. Iryna Uzlova, my name, Borys Tizengausen, political technologist. Borys, hello, glad to see you. Glory to Ukraine.
Hello, glory to the heroes.
Who is Putin? Zelenskyy was asked and he responded. Let's listen.
It is not his words that speak better about a person, but his actions. And today he is the leader, according to his status, the head of the Russian Federation. You can't kill people and say that it's not me, it's the army. You can't seize territory and say that we are not there. He talked for so long about Crimea and so on. This cannot be so. It means that he has absolutely no control over anything, or absolutely everything is controlled only by him. And I believe that today, according to their words, the messages of the media warehouse, of course, that he controls absolutely everything. This was confirmed by him himself, his entourage, the business that is close to him, which supports him, or which has fled from him to other countries. Also, intelligence is all of the same opinion. He controls everything. This means that he is responsible for these crimes. He is not a witness to the murder. He is a murderer. He gives the appropriate orders. These were not orders for protection.
This is the base, of course. It is clear that Putin is a murderer on a global scale. His entire entourage is also visible, and all the peoples and populations of the Russian Federation who support the bloody war are also, of course, their hands stained with blood, because they do nothing. This is what Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy said in a more than 40-minute interview with the Philadelphia Inquirer columnist Trudy Rubin. A good interview, a lot of topics about the front and about the future and about the prospects about Putin. Friends, look, you will not regret it. We will discuss the key points. Who is Putin, of course, how to talk to him. Zelenskyy says it is necessary through third countries, as it worked, for example, with the grain deal. Turkey, UN, separately, they say. Then, what was concluded? Two mirror deals. Perhaps, in this format, we can convey the messages that were at the peace summit in Switzerland, and on other key points of our peace formula. Of course, I am not sure, on other points, in particular, our peace formula, whether such a third party, a negotiating line, can work. Or maybe I'm wrong. And who can be a representative of such countries, and is it worth talking to the aggressor on such terms?
Good question. By the way, in this interview Volodymyr Zelenskyy told about 3 points, how the war should end. The first point is satisfaction on the part of Russia, but without revealing the concept. As I understand it, satisfaction is the payment, however forced, of reparations. It is clear that Russia will not be able to do this on its own and will not want to. So we're talking about confiscating Russian assets, 300 billion, in Europe. Then, the second point is the guarantee of Ukraine's accession to the European Union and NATO. This is important, and broad guarantees from the intermediary countries. So here is a very important question. What is a real security guarantee? I believe that Ukraine's accession to NATO is the best security guarantee for our country. While Ukraine has not joined NATO, clearly neither Trump nor Biden, by the way, are welcoming Ukraine into the alliance anytime soon. Until they do, until something happens, I don't know, Putin goes to hell or something, we need security guarantees from the big serious players. Who are these players? That is, at a minimum, they should be nuclear-armed states, but two leaders are being considered, the United States and China. Both of these states, China has influence over the Russian Federation, the United States is understandably on the other side of the barricades. But, again, that there are security guarantees even for these big countries, we've already passed one guarantee. I'm not going to kick this Budapest Memorandum now, but that's it.
That's just what I'm thinking about. That was my clarifying question. Yes, we have already seen it all somewhere.
Yes, that is a security guarantee. What should it look like in case the Russian Federation attacks Ukraine again? A signatory country to security guarantees is not going to be in a consultation, but as part of a military alliance. It may not be NATO, it may be a bilateral alliance. As part of the military alliance, it starts to help Ukraine, including by using its weapons, army and so on. But, of course, no one will agree to this. Everyone is watching. Putin, on the other hand. Russia constantly starts wars. And Putin, let's say, or not Putin, but even more repulsed, will come. We do not know who in Russia will come after him. Maybe some national patriot, even more imperial than Putin, will come and say, I don't give a damn about China or the US. Let's attack Ukraine, Georgia, Armenia, everyone, but not NATO, because NATO is a bit scary. We would have attacked long ago, but we're afraid. And what's next? Well, what next? Therefore, no one will give us such a guarantee as I said, that the country is there with its own army and weapons. To give a guarantee on what we have in the packages signed with the G7, with other countries after the Vilnius summit, this package, consultations are there. So we have the right to convene a council within 24 hours to consult and so on. Therefore, only joining NATO or an alternative military bloc, which should also include several countries. We have already talked about this. Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, Poland, Great Britain. One state must be nuclear. Well, this is the option.
This is unambiguously true, because of course we also need some phantom guarantees, consultations, and signed agreements. As we can see, it is for 10 years, because naval assistance is included in the financial form, and still some consultations. And let it be such a stepping stone to concrete treaties, NATO membership, or indeed the creation of new safe alliances, but it will all be clear, obviously, after our victory on the battlefield, how the world security architecture will be transformed or changed. A lot of people constantly ask Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy what he puts in the concept of victory. Ukrainian journalists also ask him this at various press conferences. Ukrainians themselves are also asking this question. Well, Trudy Rubin also asked him, let's hear it briefly.
The first part is to prevent the complete destruction of Ukraine and everything Ukrainian. Probably someone will say that we have already completely passed this stage, and I believe that until the war is over, we cannot say that we have fully defended our independence. Because a very important point in winning is security for today's and future generations. And this is the impossibility of repeating aggression. And that element, when we talk about winning, as president, I wouldn't want to run or skip over that element. I believe that it is one of the most important. Impossibility of returning aggression. That is, where will we be? We must be in the European Union. This is economic security. We must be in NATO. And if we don't have that, I think those are big risks for us. Very big that this enemy will return in the guise of Putin, not Putin, another Kremlin. In 20 years, 40, 50, I don't know, we need a collective defense of Ukraine.
Boris, we have already heard what victory is, and how realistic it is to perform. Will even more specific outlines be talked through, processed, and in line with the challenges and realities we will see on the battlefield?
In the concept of preserving Ukraine, I noticed that there was no clarification. I think Rudy asked, just clarified about the borders, but there was no answer to this question. Now, if I am just comparing the rhetoric, 6 months ago, this is definitely on the border of 1991. Now there is an understanding that with the volumes of supplies that we have now, this is an impossible task. That is, we are defending ourselves, but the Russians are still slowly, they are pressuring there, somewhere they have successfully pushed back our armed forces in the Kharkiv direction, but they are pressing somewhere else, in Donetsk, but without a sufficient number of aircraft, without lifting the ban on ATACMS strikes. By the way, Zelenskyy, you also talked about this, that we just saw, here before the offensive in the Kharkiv direction, we saw them concentrating there right on the border, gathering. That is, a few ATACMS strikes, which are designed to destroy living force equipment over large areas, with cluster strikes, could have disrupted this offensive. But we did not have permission to strike then. And now we also realize that the same guided bombs that are flying at Kharkiv, the airfields are within the ATACMS reach, but you can't hit them. Must not. That is, they stand in the open air.
Very out in the open. And we can't attack, and they then fly up to a safe distance for them, so that our PPO from our territory doesn't go off, and launch aerial bombs.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a gun, you can see where you need to hit, but you don't have a license. This is the situation we are in now. Of course, it's possible Putin will escalate now, on the eve, especially, of the US election. Well, and there will probably be certain bans lifted by Biden. It will be necessary to show success. See how well our weapons work there.
Let's hope these bans are lifted. By the way, Biden's family, writes CNN, is confident to continue before the election race, not to withdraw from the race as requested by the New York Times editorial board, wrote Thomas Friedman, one of his best friends, the third Police Award winner. Biden's eyewear says, "We will go all the way." Is that good or bad, and why are they so stubborn? They know for sure they can beat Trump under these circumstances.
Good question. Another very good question I get asked most often, especially in issues about the US. What, necessarily people 80 and older, in Trump's case almost 80 years old? Well, you give way at least to young politicians, give it to them. There is even a question, I am not because there are any claims. Biden thinks well, analyzes perfectly, but even for a person of such a respectable age, presidential overloads, flights and everything else are very difficult. And we see what periodically affects his health. That is, he sometimes openly says, "I didn't feel very well," at one of the most important events, at debates. And here, when presidents should feel good 24/7, anything can happen. Especially now, when the world is entering such a difficult period on the eve of almost the Third World War, so I wish both candidates good health, but you need to think about it. Come on, how many times?
Yes, it is already necessary to take into account all the risks, but nevertheless, we understand that, obviously, in such a situation, Biden's team and his entourage are ready for different combinations in which case something happens. What should Macron and France prepare for? Earlier analysts analyzed why it is not easy to be Macron now, and we see that it is indeed not easy. Thousands of rallies simply blew up France. We see, after it became known that Marine Le Pen's party, that's what's happening, basically, a pretty predictable national association, a police force that was founded by her father as well. I remind you there is a legacy there. And at the moment, which is led by Jordan Bardella, for the previous estimates, for the first round, has already gained 34% of the vote, with the Popular Front in second place with a little less than 28%. And the centrist party of President Emmanuel Macron, our good friend and decisive in his statements, will gain 23%. The danger of these far-right, the victory actually of Le Pen, but also the protests against it at the same time. What's going on, Boris, in France? Why the protests there? What to expect? And can it speak to the fact that the trend of their own kin to such a far-right West across Europe continues like this?
Absolutely. Notice where there are the most riots and where there are more problems associated with the far right. Where the bigger crisis is felt, well, what they call the migrant crisis. Germany, France. The ultra-right, they have two key topics on their agenda. The anti-migrant theme, and the topic is Eurosceptic. That is, there is no enlargement of the European Union, we do not need poor relatives. And in general, something from Brussels dictates a lot of things to us, so we want to pursue our national interests and so on. So, of course, now, especially if you have a lot of migrants in your country, if you have a strong enough left wing in your country that is just about migrant politics, so loyal, you're guaranteed to have clashes, it's their own fault. But some non-existent people voted for Marine Le Pen, specifically the French voted for her. Because the problem with migrants has now reached such a scale that Russia and Belarus are doing everything to make this problem worse. I think many people noticed that on the eve of the European Parliament elections, when the right was already gaining ground, there was a crazy number of incidents specifically related to migrants. A citizen of Afghanistan with a knife attacked a policeman, somewhere else. That is, a bunch of outbursts of such people. It was shocking, frightening, and tempting to vote for the far right, which offers very simple populist solutions. They're all, as a rule, populists. By the way, the right wing, as they say, the right wing, we have Fico, Orban with their Fidesz, and by using the migrant issue or preventing migrants from coming into their country, they are solving a lot of problems. Therefore, I repeat, there are a lot of questions for those politicians who created, forced Europe, once set quotas for admission, did it uncontrollably, saw it. Years passed, they saw that certain groups were not socialized at all, they simply did not integrate into society. The crime situation is growing. Anyway, we will pay them all great benefits, we are so good, because we have some phantom colonial pains there. All this was constructed, and now Europe is raking on this very crest of this wave, the ultra-right is gaining and will continue to gain.
For us, this is Boris, both for the course of the Russian-Ukrainian war, and for support for us. Because Marine Le Pen has so much to do with Kremlin, there's been a lot of pro-Russian statements in her time as well, but at the same time it seems like she's obviously going to be playing into Putin's hands, blocking us from getting help, or how things might develop here with France coming in. Let's consider this once, without discussing the arrival of such forces in the French Parliament, in the French government, how good or bad is it for us? Or in principle in no way.
Figuratively speaking, it is not against Ukraine, it is not against others. Since Trump. Why are we giving 60 billion there? No, Let's better build a fence on the border. That is, he is not about the fact that he does not love Ukraine. This is about nationally oriented interest. The same goes for Orban. Why should Ukraine be given money? This is from the European Union Fund. Give it to us, better the Hungarians. Well, that is, Orban has his own story there. He even has funds frozen for him. Plus, he understood, he drew a golden card from him. Now, using Ukraine as a lever, it is possible to try to unfreeze his funds, which were frozen for the fact that his entourage bought up the key media, for the fact that they quickly made changes to the constitution. Once that judges are now different, the parliament chooses them, for the fact that his close entourage receives contracts. That's the whole thing, the pressure on free speech, the pressure on the opposition, everybody is frozen for that. And he says, yes, I will not vote for Ukraine until my money is unfrozen. So it's absolutely the most cynical policy possible when you have to calculate the consequences. If you have, for example, the same Putin who gave you a 10 billion loan to modernize your nuclear power plant, who supplies you with cheap gas, if he promised you that no one will touch you, then you sit back and rejoice. And you wait. The worse Ukraine is, the better it is for you. Because you are actually twisting the arms of the European Union by slowing down aid to Ukraine. So you will argue. The maximum cynical don't give a damn about their neighbors, that's why they are Eurosceptics. I don't give a damn about anyone, I don't care about Brussels, but choose me again. Short memory, populist maximum presentation. Then, when they wake up, why did you promise? Well, I'm a right-wing populist, I don't know anything. Goodbye.
Boris, well, about the pleasant, as always, the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation has reported for the umpteenth time, for the second night in a row, that almost 4 drones were apparently destroyed, certainly by them, but not really. There are 18 drones over the territory of the Bryansk region, almost a dozen in the Kursk region. In Belgorod, of course, it is also restless. Well, this time Bryansk region got the leadership in these positions. Last night, likewise, 36 drones flew over 6 regions of Russian Federation. They destroy, but everything explodes. Well, there, we understand, Belgorod, Bryansk, Kursk, troop concentrations, military bases, flying, and thank God. It was certainly uneasy at the closing of the first month of the tourist season, most likely of the temporarily occupied Crimea. Kerch was exploding, explosions were heard near Kerch. There was a fire in Shelkino, rockets seemed to be shot down, they reached their targets. What we know about both Shelkino, which is there, and the explosions in temporarily occupied Crimea, it's always interesting, we should already have it back somehow sooner because Crimea is Ukraine.
Yes, by the way, they say that on the Arbat Spit, the building with the occupiers exploded badly. Yes, it's such a pity. And another interesting point. You have seen these photos that are on the Crimean bridge, there are queues in the direction of Crimea, everyone is driving. According to the information that I have, in order for this queue to happen, the traffic was deliberately slowed down, the passage of cars to the bridge, plus it was blocked, there was an alarm, and cars piled up, and they showed, look, there is a whole queue to Crimea. But in fact, everything is a little different there. Plus, they still very interestingly count. They wrote today that this season there are more vacationers in Crimea than in the past. It is clear that this is all a lie. Even those who went there are now taking it in packs. But what do they think? They believe that every person who left and drove in, they believe that it was he who came to rest, crossed the total number of people. And even the Crimeans themselves, who constantly drive back and forth on this bridge. Or from the other side, from Russia, all sorts of freight forwarders, a lot of everything. So, they also count them as having entered Crimea as tourists, and they inflate the figures, tell them, but they ask for money, they say, the season is not very good, give money from the budget. In general, the classics of the genre, Potemkin villages. But I saw Lubomovka online from the cameras, 2 days ago literally someone published it. It's not far from Bilbek. so there is practically no one there. Why is this so? Don't want to relax near the airfield?
Come on, there are no people on the beach.
Yeah, there. Well, I just remember at the best of times you still had to find a place to get somewhere here.
From 5 o'clock in the morning, if not at 4 o'clock.
Yes, and now? Well, it's okay. I think there will be more there on Jankoy hit this night, as far as I know, in the area of the airfield. I think that this is just again for air defense systems. Our people are looking very carefully for this experimental S-500. In terms of it, in my opinion, it has even partially flown there. But I will be able to tell you this a little later, when I have the information.
Okay, we'll wait, we'll talk tomorrow, we'll agree on Wednesday again. I think even more will explode during this time. Tomorrow my colleagues and our viewers will be happy to hear. Borys, thank you very much for this conversation, and not only. I am glad to start the week with you, thank you, see you soon. Take care of yourself. Goodbye. Borys Tizengausen, a polytechnologist, and Iryna Uzlova was with him. Subscribe, friends, please, on Borys Tizengausen's YouTube, in big blue letters in the description under this video. There's even more analysis and interesting details you may not have noticed, and Borys will also explain them to you simply. And we see that in detail, laying things out as they are and predicting how it could be, based on facts, figures and reasoning. And on YouTube channel 24 too, please subscribe. There are already more than 7 million of us. Thank you for trusting. Take care of yourself. Believe in the Ukrainian armed forces. See you and win.